Good evening. It is good evening, and I am Zoe Thompson, and you're joining me, Phoenix Life and Wellbeing Coaching, on our 7th Fire 5 at Phoenix, and I'm joined this evening by Kelly Armstrong. So Kelly, I first met two years ago. Would it be? It's got to be coming up. Is it 3? Is it 3? Okay. So Kelly, I first met quite a while ago. We think probably nearly 3 years, through the sport of strongwoman. Such an incredibly supportive sport, and Kelly is definitely up there in terms of one of the most supportive competitors out there. I think probably more focused on supporting everyone else than your own than your own competition. But so Kelly, do you want to just tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, so like Zoe said, I met you 3 years ago going to a training session in Trojan, where I just started the journey, literally just started. So I've been competing now for 3 years, training for 4, and had some massive opportunities through it. So pulling a train was one, meeting some amazing positive people, yeah, and through that, so since doing strongwoman, I've now started a clothing brand with my husband, Armstrong Apparel. So yeah, got some really good feelings coming from it. I quite like it. Yeah,
you got to pull a train, which is one thing that I never got as far as that. So I got the monster truck and transit vans, but never anything quite as exciting as a train. So if you do that as a charity event, again, I am quite tempted. And we'll put the link for the Armstrong Apparel in the chat as well, so that people can have a look at your clothing. So have you got 5 questions for me for this evening? Okay, I'm ready when you are.
Right, so being of relationships, and I think it's one that a lot of people probably asked or will ask, is how do you or would you start to build a positive relationship with yourself, and where do you feel the line is drawn between being confident with who you are and cocky with who you are towards others?
Okay. Oh, yeah, that is an interesting one. So we talked quite a lot last week. A lot of fans' questions were focused on that sort of, when do you know you build, when do you know that you are ready to start working on it, and how do you know when did you have kind of got to that phase where you're happy with yourself? Sorry, say again.
When did you notice?
So your question. I think mine came quite late. So I think mine came probably into my late 20s. But I like that bit of the question around that bit where you're self-confident and self-assured and not overdoing it and becoming overconfident, and that cocky element. And I think that's, for a lot of people, that's quite a fine line, isn't it? I think it also depends who you're with. I think also what one person perceives as confident and self-assured, another person might perceive as cocky. So I think sometimes it does depend who you're with as well, and also other people's insecurities. Because I think sometimes if you're lacking in your own self-confidence, somebody else's standard confidence might seem a whole lot more than where you're at. So I think sometimes it will depend on who you're with. I mean, as well as I do, being in the sport world, that confidence is really, really important for that, to compete and to do well in sport. Being confident and being self-assured in your abilities is really important. And I think there are some people out there that you go to competitions and you see some people and you're like, okay, God, they seem really, really confident. And then there's others that almost come across as more cocky, but it's almost like they're really inward facing, kind of channeling that confidence, that competitive confidence, as opposed to like your normal day-to-day confidence. I think there's a bit of a difference. How do you tell? I think you need a lot of self-awareness. And I think a lot of it can be just looking at other people's reactions to see how you're coming across. But I think ultimately it's that balance, isn't it, of you have to own your confidence. And if you're going to be constantly worrying about what other people are thinking, then you're probably not as confident as you think you are, because you're worrying about what other people are thinking. So I think it's that balance. I think there's the balance of being confident in yourself, having that self-assurity, but being aware of who you're with and the situation you're in, and just either dialing it back or dialing it up as to what's needed, and just being aware of other people's responses and other people's reactions to make sure that it's in balance.
Personally I have two kind of sides as well, because within the sport people are openly confident, but they're also openly insecure as well. People will openly say, I'm very nervous, I don't know if I can do this, I'm not very good, and then we all kind of very confident. Yet in my everyday life, my work life, so being a hairdresser, you're almost kind of squashed for being confident. Like, so I would always say I'm going to blow my own trumpet because nobody else will. I know I've got a lot of hard work and effort to get where I am and be as good as I am. But then you always find within that industry, you're kind of like squashed down. So it's definitely you have to pick and choose who you're with, definitely.
Well, I think in the sporting world, what looks confident probably in comparison to the work world looks very different. So it might not be necessarily that your inner confidence changes. It might just be how you adapt that to the situation that you're in, because I think that the sport, switching that on for sport probably looks very different to switching it on to be, do a confident cut and color, and something that in your world, in the hairdressing world, is quite complex. So I know that you need to switch on that focus and that attention in the same way that you would do for sport, but it would look very, very different. You probably don't have a Donna Moore type stomp coming out of the side room at the hairdressers to do a haircut, but you might have one. You might have one in competition. So it's almost like how you switch on that confidence, how you switch on that focus and that drive. But I think it is just that adaptation to where you are and what that looks like, what's appropriate for it to look like, and not overdoing it. But sometimes when it's overdone, it's an overcompensation for the nerves or not feeling confident. And I think a lot of the time that's what people see, and it's not a deliberate cockiness. It's almost people trying to display confidence and look confident, and they don't feel it, and so it's that disconnect, isn't it? Because it's not authentic. So we see what it should look like, but it doesn't add up, because we can see that there's other things going on that would suggest they're not as confident as they're perhaps making out to be. So I think sometimes it's that disconnect as well.
Okay, that's quite interesting. Ready for the next one?
Is that where, when you wrote the question, was that sort of what you were thinking, or something on a different line?
With that kind of being positive with yourself and where you build it up but like you pointed out, you almost have to switch it on and off depending on who you're with as well, because obviously, which will lead into my next kind of question as well. But,
I don't think it's a switch on or off. I think it's like a sliding dial of what it looks like, because I don't think you can just say you can feel or be less confident, but I think what you can do is adapt the behaviors that show you're confident, and adapt the behaviors rather than adapt how you feel. Does that make sense?
Okay. No, definitely. So the next one. Relationships with others can be toxic to your own relationship with yourself. How would you deal with a toxic person within sort of your circle, whether it's a relationship or a friendship? Would you let it run its course naturally, or would you address it? if it's affecting how you feel about yourself and, you know, the way you see things.
It's a good question. And I would be very surprised if there's anybody who hasn't ever experienced that. I think most of us experience that at some point. I think it's I think the question for me, if I'm answering this for me personally, I think the question for me is, what is it that makes it toxic? Is it how I feel when I'm with this person? Is it their behavior and how I feel when I'm with them? Or is it more around their behavior that perhaps isn't in alignment maybe with what's important to me? I think I would need to really think about, okay, what is it that's making it toxic? Why is this toxic? Why, you know, assuming that at some point it wasn't, because you've started a friendship, of what's changed in that dynamic, why are things now different? But I think ultimately, if you are spending time with somebody and you don't feel good when you're spending time with that person, then that distance needs to come in to look after yourself. I think for some people, you can remove them, as in like just not continue that friendship. Whether you choose to have a conversation or not about that is obviously a personal choice. And then sometimes it's just putting a bit of distance in of, you know, we can't always completely separate ourselves dependent on the circumstance. So sometimes it might just be putting a bit of distance in. I do think in terms of honesty and openness, we should probably be having those conversations of calling out the behaviour and saying, actually, when this happens, this is how I feel. But I know that's quite tough for some people. I think not everybody feels that they've got.
That's one thing I hear a lot of, especially sort of in the hairdressing world. You hear a lot of people talking about, you know, those toxic relationships and how they feel, but they just feel they cannot get out of it, or they cannot move on, and they stay within that, and you just think, oh, just say it.
Yeah,
just say it. It'd be so much easier. But yeah, so
yeah. And I think when you go into those conversations, you almost need to think about whether or not, what will you gain? Will you be able to resolve it through that conversation? Because I think sometimes you've got quite a good idea of whether or not this is something that can be talked about, whether this is something that can be resolved, or whether or not this is something that actually is quite a significant difference, and a conversation probably isn't going to work that through. And I think Doreen asked a similar question around sort of what you give your energy to, and I think sometimes actually just removing yourself and putting a little bit of distance in or separation protects you from that. And I think sometimes having those conversations can actually resolve it. It's working through whether or not you think that a conversation is going to resolve it, of sitting down with them and saying, actually, this is how I feel. I would like this, or I would like that, and whether or not you think that person is going to be open to having that conversation and listening, because it's quite a difficult conversation to hear, isn't it, let alone have. And so, you know, it's whether or not you feel comfortable doing that. But I think ultimately you do have to protect yourself in that, and you know, it's either, for me, it's either a delete or a distance. And quite often, unless you've got things that keep that friendship together or keep that relationship together, it's I think friendships are always more difficult, because it's not always a clear cut. I think a lot of people probably stick around in those a lot longer than they perhaps do in relationships. So I think that's always an interesting one. It's not such a clear cut for people.
Yeah, definitely.
But I think, for me, it's, you know, if you can't sort of remove yourself from that situation, it's putting that distance in, so that you kind of have that, the contact isn't quite as frequent, and then that gives you a bit of time to just step back. It's sometimes really difficult, isn't it, to assess what's going on when you're in it, and sometimes taking that step back and just taking a bit of a breather, and again asking those questions. Okay, why does it feel like this? What's change? What is it that I would want to change? Do I think that could change through a conversation? Is the other person going to be willing to make some changes? Am I willing to make some changes? And whether or not you think that that's possible, or whether or not you need to step away from it.
Yeah, and definitely, if it's worth all that hassle as well, are you invested enough in that relationship?
Yeah, how much do you value on that? Yeah, how much value have you placed on it? Whether or not it's worth working out, or whether it's better for both parties to step away. And the chances are, if one person feels it's toxic, the chances are the other person is not going to be feeling great about it either. It's, it would be very unusual for one person to think that it's all very happy and healthy and not have picked up on any of that if the other person has got to the stage where they're actually labeling it as toxic.
Yeah, I know. But yeah.
Okay, no, that's cool.
So I don't remember the full saying, but there is a saying: friends for a reason, friends for a season, friends for life. There's a whole say about that. So how do you feel when your need has been fulfilled from a relationship or friendship, and vice versa, when their need has been fulfilled, and kind of the relationship, very similar to the last question, but not in a toxic way, then it just like the friendship just slowly disappears? Or, do you let that, or have you let that kind of like affected how you feel about yourself? Or do you accept it quite quickly?
I think I'm probably more on the acceptance side of things. I think very much it's the reason, season, and a lifetime, isn't it? Friends are there for a reason, a season, or a lifetime.
Yeah.
And I do feel that that's true. And I think, when you look at people who you meet, quite often they're in your world for quite a short period of time, but can have a really significant impact. And then sometimes there's sort of people who kind of are that constant, and they might not have like that peak impact, but they've got that constant impact, if that makes sense, that constant kind of two-way or like 360-degree energy as you go through. It's a much more sort of equal kind of exchange. But I've known lots of people over the years that had some like really close, like for a short period of time, like a really, really kind of close, intense friendship, and then things have changed, and the thing that brought us together isn't in place anymore, and so the friendship kind of just drifts apart. And I think from my point of view, there's always that gratitude of the fact that person was in my life at a particular time, and that they played a part in that, and that I played a part in theirs for them. But I think for me it's the acceptance, appreciation, and gratitude of what that person has given and taken. But I do think, and I know this is something that we've talked about on Thrive, is that 360-degree energy exchange. And I'll quite often talk about it being like a bank account. And so ideally, over the course of your friendship or relationship, you should both be paying into that joint account. And there will be times where one of you will be paying in and one of you will be withdrawing, and then other times where the other person is paying in and you need to withdraw from that friendship. You need to take from it, and other times you can give to it. But ultimately, over a 6-month period or a year period, you should both be paying in and withdrawing equally. It shouldn't be one person paying in and one person withdrawing. And I think when friendships have that sort of equal kind of 360-degree energy exchange, and it's that flow, then, and it's with purpose, that there's a reason for you to be spending time together, that you're both getting value from that, then they can be really, really important. But I think sometimes holding on to something that has run its course can feel quite negative. But I think also that's potentially where some of the toxicity comes into it, of actually we don't have things in common, like things have changed, and that life has that flow, doesn't it? It has that flow where we're moving on, and some people move with us and some people don't. And I think if you're trying to hold on to somebody who's moving in a different direction, you're not helping them, you're not doing them any favors, because you're potentially trying to hold them back because it's what you want, it's not necessarily what they want. And also, you know, people can do that to you, and then it becomes a much more uncomfortable situation, or a negative situation to be in. So, you know, I think people, you know, there's that. I do think life and people should have that constant flow, and so we'll meet people, we'll take some people with us, and some people will meet as we pass through, and they will contribute value to us, we give value to them, and then we keep moving. But if you're trying to drag somebody on your journey, or somebody's trying to drag you on their journey, and you're going off in different directions, then that can be that unhealthy attachment of just kind of forcing something that the attachment isn't there anymore. Does that make sense?
I quite like when you said it's acceptance and the gratitude for that relationship, friendship that you had at that time. It served its purpose almost, and then you move on. I quite like the sound of
and it doesn't have to be this. It doesn't have to be this kind of difficult separation. You know, it doesn't have to be a big thing. It might just be that you, over time, you know, we've all had jobs where we work with people, and you've got that really great dynamic and a great relationship with those people who you work with, but when you don't work together very anymore, those connections start to kind of, and you move on and you have less in common. But actually, in that time when you worked with that team, or you worked with those people, you had some amazing times, and you've got some very fond memories attached to them. And if you passed them in the street, you would speak to them with that fondness, and with that, you know, with that appreciation, and with that respect for that time that you had. But that doesn't mean that there's a friendship in that, or it doesn't mean that is something that will continue. It just, again, that's the season. That's your season people. Your reason people. You know, the universe has a great way of putting people in front of you who you need at the right time. But then they're needed somewhere else, and you're needed somewhere else. So you take the lessons, you take the learning, you take the respect and the appreciation for everything that gave you, and then you can contribute that into something else.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, that's one thing I use a lot with when talking to a lot of people, is the reason and the season, and just like move on, you know, be happy, and you know. Well,
it's not. I don't. It's not personal.
No, I think
maybe it has been at some point, but you know, I think for the majority of the times, it's not. I mean, totally oblivious to all of it. I guess this isn't when there's a falling out, is it? This is when
this is just a naturally
the friendship has just run its course. So I think you just they came and they went, and there was a lot of love in the middle.
I suppose, like you said, it's accepting it and moving on, isn't it? Whereas a lot of people can't. They want to hold on to that, and then they kind of hurt themselves in the process. I like that one.
I suspect with that, you know, people they're looking at themselves as to why that person isn't trying to hold on to the friendship, that it must be something about them or something that they've done. And I think when you look at the bigger picture of the majority of our days are not spent worrying about, we spend the majority of our days worrying about ourselves, not worrying about other people. So ultimately, when people move on, or they move on to something different, it's not, you probably haven't been included in that decision-making process. You're just a part of what happens. And so I think you just sometimes let go of the fact that you're probably not a significant factor in that, and you just have to accept that actually in the jigsaw puzzle of life, that you're one small piece of blue sky that looks like a lot of other blue sky pieces.
Cool. All right. The next two are again very similar, away from that one though.
Okay.
So I'll start with the first one. How would you go about teaching children or young people to have a more positive relationship with themselves, and then hopefully in turn that will show with others? Because you find, especially with like social media, and like a lot of the young girls I see, they just like, they have no self-belief in themselves or how they feel about themselves. There is no personal relationship with themselves. And I think, so I'm going to quickly say the next question, because then the next question is, why is it we wait until we're much older in life to realise, you know, I don't care anymore what others think. This is me. I'm comfortable with me. I have a much more positive relationship with myself.
Yeah.
How would we go about teaching kind of like the younger people, you know, when they see, you know, if you just tilt your hips this way, you've got a bigger thigh gap, and if you just do this, you know, it's trying to, how would you?
Yeah. Well, so much of it is attached to appearance as well, isn't it?
Yeah.
So much of it is attached to the outside rather than the inside. But that's what children are exposed to, isn't it? We're not exposing them in the right way to what's working out what's important for them and their character. And you know, when we do, you know, when I've done workshops or on Thrive, when we've done like the values, needs and purpose, the number of times I've got people in there that are in their 30s and 40s that saying, I've never done this, I've never looked at this, I've never sat down. Yeah, I could probably have a conversation and tell you, I could probably sit down and have a conversation and tell you what's important to me, but I couldn't give it, you know, I couldn't refine it like that. I couldn't communicate it like that because I never spent time sitting down and working all of that out.
Yeah.
And so we don't do that with children at a young age. We don't praise children for character very much, do we? We tend to often we will do it on behavior, but quite often we do it on how they look, how they know their appearance. We might do it on achievement. Not very often do we do it on character. You know, we don't often give children feedback on a character. So I think there's that difference, isn't there, between behavior, because we're all able to behave in different ways, very different to what our character, that core character is of who we are as a person. And I don't think we often talk about, even as parents, you know, if I reflect on when my son was that age, I probably would have picked up more on achievements and behaviours rather than who he was growing into as a person, and giving him the confidence to hold on to that and know that that's something that he, you know, helping him to work out what's important to him and who does he want to grow into. So, you know, what's the question that we ask all of our children? What do you want to be when you grow up? Not who do you want to be, or what do you want to be like, or how do you want people to remember you? It's like, what do you want to do? What do you want to do for a job? What do you want to achieve?
Yeah.
So, you know, so much of it is that the external stuff, which ultimately we don't really have any control over either.
No.
So, you know, you think the children that are of the age of your children potentially will go into jobs that haven't even been created yet.
Yeah. YouTubers.
That's how quickly the world's moving. So exactly. So you look at, you know, when we have these conversations with children now, like, what do you want to be when you grow up? They've got no control over that at the moment. We don't even know what the world's going to look like in 12 months' time, let alone in 10 years' time when they reach that age. But what we can be doing is having conversations with them. You know, what do you really like about yourself? What do you think other people really value and appreciate you for? What do you know, when you're an adult, what kind of person do you want to be? Because that's 100% in their control.
Yeah.
And we don't do that. We don't sit down. It's like the life skills in school, isn't it? And I don't know whether I don't think it's necessarily a school curriculum activity. I think it's something we need to be helping them shape as parents. But I think it's that two-way process, isn't it? Because if children do it in school, they come home and they educate us as parents, because most of us as parents haven't been educated to be able to support them to do it. So it almost needs that two-way process. But it goes in with the life skills, doesn't it, of your communication skills and you know, how you manage your time and how you manage a budget and all of these other things that would, you know, kind of core skills.
Because
Does that answer the first part of the question or the second, or have I answered neither?
No, you have. I was going to say, because getting back to the school side of things, having a child with ASD, I'm often asked, what do you want for Stanley? You know, when he's older, what do you want? And my answer is always to be an adult that is accepted in society. An adult, so, you know, he can be an adult that can live a daily life as normal, whatever normal is.
Yeah.
And I always get that kind of look. It's like, why would I not want my child to be, you know, an adult who is polite, who is caring, who is, you know, I don't care what he does as a job. He can sweep the roads. He can, you know, if he can't read or write, that doesn't matter, as long as he is a nice person with it, you know. So yeah, that kind of baffles them a lot.
I can relate to that, and I've always had that view. You know, from that academic versus social skills of he's at key stage, whatever it is, tick those boxes, but what's my child like with other children? What's my child like with adults? Is, you know, how is he behaving with other people? I want to know what his social skills are like, because he can be a grade A student, but if he doesn't have the social skills, those are the things that are likely to impact him more in terms of happiness and fulfillment as an adult.
Yeah.
So those were always more important to me too. I know that, you know, with Stanley, you know, he can be very happy in his world. It's helping that the other people in this world to understand that his happiness and his may look a little bit different, but he's okay, he's good.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of us, not everybody, because there's a long way to go. I think people are understanding that a little bit more, aren't they? And I think the more people step into that, owning their uniqueness or owning what they're like and being different, the more we kind of destroy these pockets of what good looks like, or what beautiful looks like, or what success looks like, because people are doing that in very different ways. And I think that then helps us to kind of crack open this historical, this is what you should be looking like. You know, you should look like this, you should behave like this, you should be like this. So I think that kind of cracks it open a little bit, doesn't it? Of actually, you're a good person, you're polite, you're friendly, you treat people with kindness, you treat people with respect. Doesn't matter what you look like, it doesn't matter what type of relationship you're in, it doesn't matter, you know, how much money you've got in the bank, that this is where we all come together and we've all got something in common. It doesn't matter what country you were born in, or what language you speak, or your culture, or your religion, or any of those things, because ultimately, if we're all kind and respectful, that's a universal thing, isn't it?
Because another thing, I always get commented on how polite my children are, and I think people shouldn't have to comment on how polite they are. People should just be polite, you know, these children as well, because not everybody is like teaching those values of, and then that in turn, you know, if they're polite to you, you'll be polite back, and then it's building those relationships from a younger age, so then they become a nicer adult.
I think it shouldn't be a standout. People shouldn't be surprised that somebody's children are polite, but I do think it's nice that it's commented on, almost more so than, wow, your child's got lovely hair, or oh, she looks so pretty, or do you know, that kind of reinforces, you know, this is good thing. I think actually it's nice to see that that's recognized, but it shouldn't be a standout. People shouldn't be surprised by that, because we should all be behaving like that. But actually, we know that some people struggle with that a little bit more than others. And I catch myself doing it, because the first thing you want to do, isn't it, when somebody shows you a picture of their children, the first thing you want to do is go, oh, what lovely looking kids, or oh, doesn't she look like you, or oh, isn't, you know, aren't they beautiful, look handsome, or what a handsome young man. And that's the first thing, isn't it, is to make a comment on what they look like, rather than, I know it's difficult with a picture picture, isn't it? But I think when you meet somebody else's children, and when we're commenting on our own children, I think it's nice to pick up on the character and the positive behaviour traits rather than the achievements and
definitely.
those elements.
Definitely. So the last question, and was very similar. Why is it you think that we finally accept who we are and build a much more positive relationship when we hit a kind of certain age, a bit older, a bit more life experience? Generally, most people say about 40, you kind of lose that kind I don't care attitude. I don't care what I look like. I'm 40 now. So, and then you build that, much stronger relationship with yourself, that you appreciate who you are, what your body's been through in the last 40 years. So it's kind of similar, like to the other question, why can't we teach that to the younger children, and then life would be so much nicer than finding it out when we hit 40.
I think it does. I wonder how much of it we can teach and how much of it is something we have to experience. I think when in the years between kind of teens and 40, a lot of stuff gets challenged, doesn't it? Life challenges what's important to us and helps us to really work out, okay, this is really important. This is not negotiable for me. This is important, but I could probably be swayed a little bit on it. And these are the things that I don't care about. You might, but I don't. And I think it takes you those years, doesn't it, to almost kind of filter through. It's almost like a sorting pile, isn't it? Of okay, and you kind of go through an experience. And I think especially this is the adversity experience, isn't it, where we have to fight for something, we have to fight to keep something, or we have to fight to get rid of something. And I think that's when we really start to work out what's important. And I think also by 40 you start to kind of get more focused on, again, where your energy's going, of like, I haven't got the energy for that today, and I haven't got energy to be putting into that. It's the book by Mark Manson where he talks about at the beginning of the day you've got 10 to give, and so use them wisely. So if you've only got 10 to give, then how do you use them? Because if you're going to use them all up by 10 o'clock, arguing with somebody being in the bathroom, somebody cutting you up, and there being a queue in the coffee shop going into work, you've only got 7 left for the rest of the day. And I think as we get a little bit older, it's almost like, okay, I can't give that my energy. Like, I've got this amount of energy and this is where I want to give it, and kind of working that bit out. But I think also we meet a lot more people, so I think you have that, what would be the right word? It's not, is it a validation? I want to say validation, but I think as we get a bit older and we meet more people, and more people like us, and we meet more people, we build those relationships and friendships. It's almost like that validation, isn't it? That okay, we're a good person, and we do right by people, and people are kind of warm to that or attracted to that. So I think it's not tested quite as much. Whereas I think when you're growing up and nobody knows who they are or what they're about, there's no kind of solid ground. Everybody's kind of questioning everybody else, and nobody knows what the hell's going on. Nobody knows who they want to be from Monday through to Friday. It changes all of the time. And I think as you get older, you kind of hit that solid ground a bit more. You learn who you are, and then you that doesn't change quite as frequently. You've probably got a few years in the same job, and then you might have a few years with the same partner. So you kind of have that sort of more solid ground for longer periods. Whereas I think those younger years, everything changes all of the time, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Like even just like a new school year, you've got a new group of friends, a new teacher.
Yeah, everything is hormones.
And let's not even add hormones in. Yeah, I was going to say, so even adding hormones into the mix. And so I think when you're not sure and you're not confident who you are, you tend to be more observant and more questioning of who other people are, because you're trying to learn about yourself through other people.
Yeah.
And I think as we get a bit older, we probably don't have that mix and match quite as much. We tend to have our groups, and I think that helps.
I think you do as you
I think also by the time you
oh sorry I was going to say
you learn to find, I think you learn to find who your people are, don't you? You start to I think you recognize who they are a lot easier, so you don't end up spending lots of time with lots of different people, work out who your tribe are or who your people are. And I think there's always opportunities to meet new people, but I think you're kind of you get grounded, don't you, with you grounded people of who you spend most of your time with, and that gives you the validation, doesn't it? The validation that of what your character is and what's important. Yeah, I think it does come with experience, though. I think we can teach some of it in school, but I think that's also as tough as it is sometimes, there's actually a lot of value in those moments of like working that out.
Yeah, I suppose that's why. So when you get to sort of 40, older or younger, you've had those experiences to sort of say, this is me now. So. Yeah,
and I think there's that saying, isn't there, of there's a saying something along the lines of like a tea bag, you don't know the strength of it until it's put in the hot water. And I think that's kind of what life experiences are like for our character, isn't it? That's it, until you go in the hot water. And I think that's, as tough as life can be sometimes, I think that's where we really help, where we really kind of work out our strength of character and start to define who we are and what we're capable of, and what we truly believe in and what's really important to us.
Yeah, I did.
I think you can't take the experience out of that. I think that's a really important part of it.
It's life.
Yeah. You don't want to experience all of it too early either, do you?
No.
I know most 13-year-olds think they have all of the answers.
I have a 5-year-old.
And I know that I thought I had all of the answers at 13, that's for sure. But I don't think you'd want to miss out on those experiences of that, because that's all part of the journey, isn't it? Of how that shapes.
True. And then I suppose in the later part of your life, you then are just relaxed and comfortable and enjoy it.
Yeah,
most of it.
But again, you get to when you look at that age group, there's other life changes that then happen around you, aren't there? If you're a parent, your children leave home, or you retire, and so there's other things that then challenge a part of your identity, or part of your what you contribute to other people, or what other people contribute to you. So you go through another little shake up again, don't you? Of
I see a lot of
so this was my value before, or this was sorry, say again.
I was going to say, I see a lot of people when their children have grown up and they've always been needed by them, and then they're lost because they've not spent any time for themselves. It's just been about the children, and they've gone to uni or they've moved out. They've now been, and they're so lost with who they are and what to do now. Because their need to be needed, has gone. Yeah, so that's quite a big step when people get a little bit older as well. See a lot of that.
Yeah, and then you and that's, for some people, that's retirement. That's what if you, especially your work is part of your identity. It's how if you think about the human needs, that's your contribution, your significance, that's where you get your variety from. It's where you get your routine from. It's how you feel part of something, and it becomes part of you. And so, you know, when you retire and then you have nothing, you know, it's not that you have nothing, because you have retirement and you're supposed to relax and enjoy it, but you have to find other ways to fulfill those needs in a retirement type of way. Or that's why a lot of people go into voluntary work or still have part-time jobs, isn't it? Because they still need to tick that box to balance out the retirement, you know. So you know, it's so many of these relationships, whether it's work, family, they contribute as much to us as we contribute to them. And so when that dynamic changes, we have to almost look at, okay, what did they bring to me? What did I give to them? What's now the gap, and how can I fulfill that gap in a positive way through something else?
Yeah. No, I quite like that. Yeah.
And that's a challenge, isn't it?
Yeah, big one. So I see a lot of people, they get a bit stuck around that kind of that time.
Yeah, well, it's you know, if you think even just you know, our you know, from a psychological needs point of view, you know, you've got the variety, the routine, connection, significance, love, contribution. So all 6 of those are in parenting, and a lot of those are in a workplace as well. Especially if you enjoy the work that you've got, then that is, you know, that's a lot of gaps to fill in a different way. And if it's becomes part of your identity, isn't it? It's fundamentally, it becomes who you are. So, you know, whilst retirement is what most of us are kind of working towards, it's how you still fulfill those needs, those human needs, while you're, you know, not working, or not raising children, or not being a part of something that's bigger than you. And that's quite a tough one. And I think a lot of people really struggle, especially with children leaving home and retirement. I think then they're very rarely talked about, are they, as quite significant moments for an individual to have to work through. And I don't think, you know, even in people planning for retirement, people will think about the financials. They'll think about, okay, how do I pay the bills when I'm not working? Where am I going to spend my time when I'm not working? But don't often think about, okay, how do I fulfill my needs when I'm not working? And how do I still get that value and that fulfillment?
Yeah. No, hopefully that's answered a few.
You have an answer next time somebody asks you.
Yeah, I did hear a question. Somebody's bringing a book out. It was about his 3rd book. Just before I clicked onto you, and I've not heard somebody actually ask that question in the way he said it. Like, who are you? I don't want to hear what job you do. Don't want to hear how old you are. I don't want to hear, you know, what your hobbies are. I want to hear who you are.
Yeah.
And I said, ask me, who am I? And I quite like that. It's one I want to sit and answer myself. So it's that kind of relationship with myself.
Yeah. So I think, so interestingly, and I know that I do this with other people on Thrive. I'm on a coaching course at the moment, and we've been looking at purpose. And so everything that we're looking at this month is, who are we as a coach? Why do we coach? You know, why? Like, so not who do you coach, or, you know, why do you get value from coaching, but looking at who we are as individuals, and why do we coach? What's our purpose of coaching? And it's really, really interesting, just really interesting conversations of, you know, how people have got on this journey through to coaching, and what again, you know, what they get from coaching, but what they can give through coaching, but how it quite often fits through people's experiences and people's journeys, and of who they are as a person, and how that comes out through their coaching. So it's been really, really interesting.
Yeah.
But yeah, we do, don't we? We always focus on what people do, rather than who they are. But actually, if we stripped away all of that, that's the one thing that universally we've all got in common, because we're all humans. So we've all got character strengths and behavior strengths that we could all have in common. So forget all of the differences. Where do we all come together?
Yeah, who is inside, not the external. Like, yeah. I didn't get to see it all, but like his first.
Because that's the bit that people will remember.
Pardon?
So that will be the bit that people will remember.
Yeah, I mean, like part of his answer.
That's the Maya Angelou. Sorry, go on.
I was going to say part of his was, I saw the first part was I'm emotionally connected, and then he carried on, and I was like, oh, I'm going to have to look at that one.
Interesting.
Yeah,
it's the Maya Angelou quote, isn't it? Of people will forget what you've said, they forget what you did, but they won't forget how you made them feel or how they felt with you. I think it's a Maya Angelou quote.
Let's look at that.
And I think, you look at most people who you remember who are no longer with us, we don't necessarily remember what they look like or what they did, but we remember our experiences with them and how we felt with them.
Yeah.
And I think that is really, really important. And that kind of goes back to that first question, isn't it, of working on what's important for you and building that relationship with yourself so that you're secure in that to give that to other people and share that with other people.
Yeah. Yeah. They all connect together though, don't they? So you can ask one question, but they're all, it could be 10 questions in one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Definitely. So was that your 5?
Yeah, that was my 5.
Was it? That I was going to say that went really quickly, but it's actually been 50 minutes. It wasn't that quickly at all. It felt really quick.
Yeah. That's so
quick. They were really great questions though. I'm blown away by they're very thought-provoking questions, but hopefully something in the answers is helpful to people who are watching. And there's a couple of comments which I'll respond to after we hang up, because I can't multitask and give both sides 100% my attention. I'll reply to the comments afterwards, but I've seen hearts, likes come up, so hopefully there's something in those answers that's helpful to people. But they were really great questions.
You're welcome. I enjoyed.
Thank you so much. Thank you for
thank you for having me.
No, it's brilliant. I'm really enjoying them, and I'm enjoying like the variety of questions that are coming through for people. So it's interesting to see what people are coming up with. So
yeah,
thank you so much.
You're welcome.
So we will call it there. This will go out onto YouTube and Instagram TV as well. So it will sit on the Facebook page. So if you're watching back and you want to comment, or if you're watching anywhere else and you want to comment, I will pick the comments up and reply. Thank you, Kelly, so much for your time. And if you've been watching, thank you very much for your time in joining us as well. We will be back next week. I believe it's Monday, but I will post up the date and time. One more for this month on this topic, and then we move into a new month and a new topic. So hopefully you can join us next week. But Kelly, thank you so much for your time.
For having me. That's been good.
And wish you a good night.
Yeah, good night.
Thank you.
See you soon. Bye-bye.